Imagine this. Your partner's mum suddenly claims the car you've driven for years, just because her name is on the title. Now she wants to dump an old clunker on you instead. What would you do? Let's walk through this real story and see where the line gets drawn. It all started with love and practicality. You know how life works sometimes. You fall for someone, you build a life together, and eventually you start making decisions that blend the line between yours and ours. That's what happened to her. 6 years together, 2 of those years living under the same roof, and she's been the only one behind the wheel the whole time. Not because her partner couldn't, but because he simply didn't drive. So, naturally, the car became her lifeline, to work, to groceries, to every doctor's appointment and errand, all of it. But here's the thing, cars wear out. And after years of constant driving, hers finally gave out. It reached that point where the cost of repairs was higher than what the car was even worth. So, her partner, wanting to help and support her, did something kind. He offered to buy a new car, for both of them, but mostly for her to use. They agreed she would cover a portion of the monthly payment, and he'd cover the rest. Not a perfect deal, but it worked for them. Now this is where things start to get murky. His mother stepped in and generously gifted them $3,000 to help with the down payment. A birthday gift, she called it. But she didn't just stop there. She also co-signed the loan. On paper, it was her name and her son's on the title. Not hers. Not the one who'd be driving that car every single day. But again, it felt like a shared thing. A family thing. They paid the monthly bill themselves. They paid for tires, for oil changes, for repairs. Everything. And even when she had to stop working due to a medical issue 2 years ago, they still found a way to keep up with it. She gave up her own car, donated it, in fact, to a program for families in need. That's how much she believed in this shared life. That's how much she thought they were in this together. And now, with her health back on track and 2 internships lined up, she was finally about to hit the road again, this time toward financial stability. But just when she thought she could breathe a little, life tossed her a twist. Her partner's mom, yes, the same one who co-signed, wrecked her own car. And without telling anyone, she bought an older vehicle, then announced that she planned to register it under her name. Why? Because she believed she was taking back what was rightfully hers, the newer car they had been driving. All of a sudden, everything that felt like ours now felt like hers. She wasn't just being offered a replacement car, she was being told, more or less, to accept a 15-year-old vehicle she didn't choose, had no information about, and would now be legally responsible for. It didn't sit right, not after everything she had invested, her time, her money, her trust. And that's where the tension really began. Now imagine being in her shoes. You've kept the house running, the errands going, the wheels quite literally turning, for years. You've quietly accepted that the car isn't in your name. You've trusted that the people around you see your effort, your commitment, your role in making this partnership work. And then suddenly, someone who hasn't touched the steering wheel once in your daily life says, "I'm taking it back." That's what hit the hardest. Not just the logistics of losing the car, but the way it happened. Her partner's mother didn't ask. She didn't open a conversation. She simply made a decision, then presented it as a done deal. "I'll take the newer car. Here's an old one. Let's put it in your name so you're not left with nothing." On the surface, it might sound generous, but dig a little deeper and you realize this wasn't a gift, it was a swap, and not a fair one. She would be expected to insure this older car, register it under her name, maintain it, and drive it, all without knowing if it was even reliable, and all while having no job yet, no steady income, and no input in the decision. Think about that. Would you agree to take on a financial and legal burden like that, just to make someone else feel entitled to what you've been using and caring for? She didn't say no right away. She paused. She thought it through. She asked questions, reasonable ones. Like, why can't you use the car you bought if you need one? Why not register the older vehicle in your own name and use it yourself? Why do I have to be the one who compromises when I've already sacrificed so much? And the only answer she got, because my name is on the title. That was it. No consideration for the history. No acknowledgement of how the car had been used, just a hard, flat line drawn in paperwork. It made her realize something that's true for a lot of families, but we don't always talk about. Generosity can come with strings, and sometimes those strings tighten when it's most inconvenient. She wasn't ungrateful. She knew the mother had helped them out early on. But help isn't the same as control, and when help turns into a weapon or a power play, it stops being kind. So now she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. If she refuses, she risks damaging the already fragile relationship with her partner's mom. If she agrees, she's accepting a car she didn't want, taking on risks she didn't choose, and giving up the only car she's ever had full access to in years. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like a trap. And worse, her partner? He wasn't really stepping in, at least not yet. Maybe he felt torn. Maybe he didn't want to get in the middle. But from her point of view, she already was in the middle, trying to keep her independence from being signed away. So what do you do when the people around you start making decisions about your life, without including you in the conversation? That question kept circling in her head. She wasn't trying to start a fight. In fact, for most of her relationship, she had played the role of the peacemaker, the one who let small things slide, the one who reminded herself, it's not worth it, just to avoid conflict. But this wasn't small. This wasn't something you could just nod along to and hope it would sort itself out. Because at the heart of it, this wasn't just about a car, it was about control. Control over her choices, her finances, her future, and maybe even her sense of dignity. She had just gotten her health back. She had jobs lined up. For the first time in a long time, she was standing on solid ground again. But now, someone was shaking it beneath her feet, acting as if the stability she was working toward didn't matter. What hurt more than anything was how quickly that shift happened. One day she was a trusted partner in the household, and the next, she felt like a guest being handed leftovers. And still, she stayed calm. She didn't yell, she didn't slam doors. She said what she needed to say, clearly and respectfully. She told her partner's mum, I'm not comfortable putting a car in my name that I didn't choose. Can't afford to maintain, and wasn't even told about ahead of time. Reasonable, right? But instead of working through it with her, the response she got was cold. Look into insurance and let me know. Like the matter was already decided, like she just needed to fall in line. That's when the emotional exhaustion really set in. It's not easy to stand your ground when you feel outnumbered, especially when the person who's supposed to be in your corner, your partner, doesn't fully speak up. She understood that family dynamics can be complicated. She knew her partner didn't want to upset his mum, but at the same time, who was standing up for her? She had poured so much of herself into building a shared life. She gave up her car, her time, even her health. And now, when it was finally time to rebuild, she felt like she was being quietly pushed aside. So she made a decision, one that wasn't loud or dramatic, but deeply personal. She told her partner she couldn't accept the 2010 vehicle, not unless she had full information, full consent, and full control. And if that meant they'd have to have a hard conversation as a family, so be it. Because here's the thing, boundaries aren't just about saying no, they're about protecting the parts of your life you've worked hardest to build. And for her, this car wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of freedom, of movement, of getting her life back. And she wasn't about to hand that over, just because someone else thought they had the final say. The hardest part wasn't the car. It wasn't even the mother-in-law's attitude or the pressure to accept a situation she had no hand in creating. No, the hardest part was the silence from her partner. She kept hoping he'd step in. Just a simple, hey Mom, this isn't fair, or let's talk about this together. Something, anything, to show her she wasn't alone in this. But those words never came, and silence, when it stretches too long, starts to feel like betrayal. She knew he was in a tough spot, torn between loyalty to the woman who raised him and the woman he built a life with. But relationships only work when both people are willing to make the hard choices together. When someone you love is being put in an impossible situation, doing nothing is doing something. And in this case, it felt like he was choosing comfort over courage. So she had to start having honest conversations with herself. She asked, "If I say yes to this now, what will I be asked to give up next? If I let someone else make my decisions for me today, how do I rebuild the confidence I fought so hard to regain?" These weren't easy questions. They came with long pauses, deep breaths, and some tears, but they also brought a surprising gift: clarity, because for the first time in a long while, she stopped doubting what she felt. She stopped minimizing her discomfort or second-guessing her instincts. She realized she wasn't being unreasonable. She wasn't being selfish or dramatic. She was simply setting a boundary in a place where no one else had been willing to draw a line. And once she saw that clearly, everything else started falling into place. She started researching car titles, co-signing laws, and vehicle insurance policies. She looked into whether her name could be added to the current vehicle's title once it was paid off. She even explored her options in case the car really was taken: rental programs, local support for women returning to work, short-term financing options. Not because she wanted to prepare for the worst, but because she was tired of feeling powerless. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law remained firm. She refused to budge on her belief that the car belonged to her, even though she hadn't paid a dime in years outside of insurance and registration. There was no apology, no reconsideration, just that same quiet pressure. Take the old car and be grateful. But the more pressure she felt, the stronger her resolve became. This wasn't just about one woman trying to take a car. It was about a pattern, about power, control, and the expectation that she'd be the one to quietly adjust while others made decisions. Not this time. She had already survived so much: medical setbacks, financial strain, and emotional burnout. She wasn't going to lose herself in this too, because sometimes, when the people around you won't fight for your worth, you have to fight for it yourself. In the end, she stood her ground. She didn't take the older car. She didn't agree to anything she wasn't part of, and she made it clear, firmly, calmly, and without drama, that she would no longer accept decisions being made for her behind closed doors. It wasn't easy. Her partner's mom didn't take it well. There were some tense conversations, a few cold silences, even some guilt-tripping. But through all of it, she kept her focus on one thing: her future. Because that car, almost paid off, used every day, maintained with her own hands, it wasn't just a vehicle. It represented freedom, independence, a next chapter she had fought to reach after years of medical setbacks and financial struggles. And she wasn't going to let someone else write the ending to her story. And something unexpected happened. Her partner, maybe because he saw how serious she was, or maybe because he finally understood the emotional weight of it all, started to come around. He didn't magically fix everything overnight, but he began asking the right questions. He listened. He spoke up, gently, to his mom. And slowly, the conversation shifted from, "You need to give it up," to, "Let's figure this out together." That was all she wanted in the first place. Not a fight, not a power struggle, just a seat at the table, a chance to be heard, a say in her own life. The situation is still complicated. The title is still in someone else's name, but the message is clear now. She's not going to be pushed out of the picture. Not by silence, not by pressure, not by paperwork. She's building her future, on her terms. And you know what? Maybe that's the bigger story here. It's not just about cars, or co-signers, or insurance. It's about what happens when you stop minimizing your own voice and start trusting it instead. Because at some point, all of us have to draw a line. And when you do it with clarity, self-respect, and calm, not anger, you start changing more than just your situation. You start changing how people see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Now, let's bring it back to you. Have you ever had someone try to make a decision for you that didn't feel right? Tap the arse if you've ever stood up for yourself, even when it was uncomfortable. Drop a nouse if you've ever had to push back, even with family. And if this story made you feel seen, hit that like and share it with someone who needs a reminder. You're allowed to say no. We've got more real stories just like this one coming every week. So if you're still with us, hit that follow. You won't want to miss what's next.